Chapter 1347, Pillar. Above the gray fog, in the ancient palace beside the Fool's Seat, a prayer point of light expanded to produce a rippling halos. It was as though someone had suddenly drawn the curtains in a dark, sealed room, allowing sunlight to shine in, piercing into the eyes of the sleeping one. The whirlpool of maggots, which had already quietened down, once again went berserk, as it began to flail the slippery and strange tentacles. Klein's gaze swept past the parts that were related to the Lord of the Mysteries, and he read the subsequent content on the slate. Eternal darkness, singularity of all, space time in one. River of eternal darkness plus evernight uniqueness plus death, eternal sleeper. Uniqueness plus twilight giant uniqueness plus one night of misfortune beyonder characteristic plus one pale emperor beyonder characteristic plus one hand of God beyonder characteristic. Goddess of origins, mother of all brood hive of filth. Brood hive plus mother uniqueness plus the moon uniqueness plus one nature walker beyonder characteristic plus one beauty goddess beyonder characteristic. The anarchy, shadow of order. Nation of disorder plus black emperor uniqueness plus justiciar uniqueness plus one prince of abolition beyonder characteristic plus one hand of order beyonder characteristic. Calamity of destruction, origins of disaster. City of calamity plus demoness, chaos demoness, primordial demoness. Uniqueness plus red priest uniqueness plus one apocalypse beyonder characteristic plus one conqueror beyonder characteristic. Father of devils, lord of deviants, source of curses. Tenebrous world plus abyss uniqueness plus chained uniqueness plus one filthy monarch plus one abomination beyonder characteristic. Demon of knowledge, arcana of madness. Knowledge more plus the hermit uniqueness plus paragon uniqueness plus one knowledge emperor beyonder characteristic plus one illuminator beyonder characteristic. Key of light, endless disorder, incarnation of fate. Key of light plus wheel of fortune uniqueness plus one giant serpent beyonder characteristic. These are the great old ones, title corresponding to the 9 Sephirot. After reading it, Klein sighed inwardly. If he and Emperor Roselle knew this mysticism, knowledge earlier, neither of them would have ended up in their present situations. At certain times, even without using beyonder powers, knowledge is completely equivalent to power. The titles of the combined pathways of Earth and Moon are somewhat different from Mother Goddess of Depravity. From the looks of it, it is indeed just a part of her, which means that the title and authority left to the outer deity on the moon is Mother Goddess of Depravity, origin of evil, the indestructible. By the same logic, the Mother Tree of Desire's full name should be Mother Tree of Desire, Heartless God, Perpetual Blatherer. The situation regarding the Son of Chaos isn't very clear. It's as though he vanished and no one can fully understand him. Klein nodded indiscernibly. He then asked, from the looks of it, the omnipotent and omniscient is the strongest. The Lord of the Mysteries and the Space-Time one are ranked second. The rest are ranked third. This was determined by the number of beyonder pathways each needed, excluding the outer deities. Adam looked at the blasphemy slate and calmly said, "That's not how it is. The number of authorities has a certain connection to level and status, but not entirely. The corresponding characteristics, power, and symbols are equally important." After the original creator split apart, the 3 pillars stood above all the great old ones. One was God Almighty, omnipotent and omniscient, the other was Lord of the Mysteries, the King of Spacetime, and the last was Mother Goddess of Depravity, origin of evil. Upon hearing Adam's last sentence, Klein couldn't help but look down at his left sleeve. Arodes was hiding inside. No wonder Arodes said that he saw a pillar and support from me. Klein had suddenly arrived at a state of enlightenment, as he was a little more convinced by what visionary Adam had said. At this moment, Adam added at an adequate pace. Currently, the first 2 pillars only exist in the form of Sephirot, and after the Mother Goddess of Depravity had the brood hive and 2 beyonder pathways separated from her, she became not much different from the other outer deities. Only her symbol as a pillar remains. If it wasn't for the blood-stained stake in his chest, Klein definitely would have felt that the ambience was great for a conversation. In moments when his mind trailed, he even imagined that he and Adam were friends and were happily discussing some mysticism knowledge, waiting for his child Ammon to return home for dinner. Of course, I'm dinner. I have to say that a spectator's ability to influence others' knowledge, experience, and state is really too powerful. As Klein told himself to be on guard, he asked in puzzlement, I thought that the outer deities like the mother goddess of depravity, who has 2 or even 3 sephirot, are considered pillars. Adam looked down at the silver cross pendant hanging across his chest and said, She only has 1 sephira. Under normal circumstances, the sephirot can't be separated. Only when the original creator split and created an embodiment of convergence and separation did the sephirot tear apart, allowing some of them to be sucked into our planet. In other words, the present Sephira, the mother goddess of depravity, is incomplete. The future Great Old One, mother of all, won't be a complete Great Old One, Klein pressed. Adam's lips twitched as though he was smiling. It was so at the beginning, but the Sephirot has the ability to mend itself. The present mother goddess of depravity's Sephira isn't incomplete, and the brood hive can also create a Great Old One itself. The only problem is that the mother goddess of depravity can only use a portion of pillar she symbolizes unless she is fused with the brood hive again. This has also caused the birth of life and the feminist powers in the entire universe to undergo a certain anomaly. However, thousands of years of time at astronomical scales is a very short period of time, and the corresponding influence hasn't spread. And if any outer deity obtains a sephira that is neighboring theirs, making it equivalent to having 2 sephirot, I can't predict what will happen. Before that, only the original creator had contained more than singular sephira. However, as long as he awakens, he will definitely split apart. Klein nodded and asked thoughtfully, In the beginning, the creator accommodated at least 9 sephirot. This doesn't mean that having 2 sephirot or even 3 will not result in problems. There should be a critical point. No one can verify this at the moment. Adam held the silver cross pendant in front of his chest and said, I'm guessing that some existences have attempted it before. After all, convergence is a very strong instinct, but the outcome is unknown. Which existences? Klein rubbed the bloody cross wooden stake that was stuck in his chest. Adam cast his gaze at the gigantic cross that was more than 100 meters tall in front of him, and calmly said, The God Almighty from the early first epoch. He can also be called the primordial one. In addition, there's also the Lord of the Mysteries, the one you often recite. As he spoke, Adam turned to look at Klein and said in an imitating manner, The celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings. These two seem to have vanished. The outcome of their attempts doesn't seem too good. Klein hadn't thought of what he wanted to say when Adam turned his head and looked at the second blasphemy slate. What I can be sure of is that some sephirot cannot be accommodated at the same time. In this universe, there is a hidden 4th pillar. It represents everything, including the end of the Great Old Ones and the universe itself. It corresponds to the 2 sephirot, river of eternal darkness and city of calamity. Simply put, if Evernight can become an eternal darkness, singularity of all space-time in one, she can further occupy the 2 pathways of Demoness and Red Priest, encompassing the city of calamity and becoming the true 4th pillar. However, when that happens, she will either enter a deep sleep, be passively split apart, or it will cause the entire universe, including her and us, to be annihilated, starting everything all over again. Never expected that. Once above the sequences level is reached, the symbolism is more important than authority. Adam, no, the ancient sun god's mysticism knowledge is simply too terrifying, as expected of a quasi-great old one. Klein sighed when he heard that. He thought and said, In other words, a demigod from the sleepless pathway can transfer to the demoness pathway. That's right. Adam looked straight ahead. But in that case, there's no way to become a great old one unless one thinks of a way to separate the beyonder characteristics from before. As Klein looked up, he read the demigod potion formulas of the spectator, sleepless, and arbiter pathways and changed the topic. Where did the potion formula related to the great old ones come from? The first blasphemy slate didn't seem to contain them. Were they hidden in the different sequence 0 potions? Adam's expression changed slightly, and his face seemed to be more radiant. After I gained initial control of the omnipotence and omniscience authority, I began to deduce the method and pathway to become a great old one. Finally, I found a suitable formula and figured out the different symbolism. Unfortunately, at that time, the primordial one had also awoken inside me. Therefore, when the ancient sun god perished, you used a portion of your body and will to create a second blasphemy slate. Klein sighed and said, "From now on, there will be light for the apocalypse." It also ended the chaotic battle between the deities due to anger, emotions, and other reasons. It initiated the era of working towards becoming great old ones. Adam maintained his previous expression and didn't say anything. Klein fell silent. After a few seconds, he suddenly asked, "What kind of humanity did you fabricate in that marionette of mine?" Adam turned his head and said with clear eyes, he was too tired. He wanted rest and freedom, even if it was only for a few seconds. Klein gaped, not knowing how to respond. "Why didn't you address him as Jayaman Sparrow, but refer to him as that marionette?" Adam asked warmly, as though he was trying to straighten out the thoughts of a member of his congregation. Klein turned his head to look at him, and suddenly said with a smile, "I'm Jayaman Sparrow. Jayaman Sparrow is a part of me. If I separate them, even if I can escape your divine kingdom, it will be difficult for me to avert the fate of losing control." Having said that, Klein paused and looked ahead. He asked in a deep voice, "You only have godhood left." Rorstad Archipelago, City of Generosity, Bayam. After returning here, Verdu Abraham learned that the god of war was a rather active existence in the fourth epic. It was possible for him to respond to believers. Then he hired a poor person who willingly risked his life to pray to the god of war to confirm that there was no danger. And the price of all of that was 300 gold pounds. Now he received a report that not only was that poor person not dead, he even had some of his wishes fulfilled.